My guest this episode is Kevin Hagino. Kevin spent 7.5 years at LEGO on their Incubation and Creative Play Labs team, and most recently was with Kraken launching their NFT marketplace. This is an incredibly fun and interesting conversation that I hope will help many. I think Kevin has a lot of really interesting things and perspectives to share. And before I forget, you can find this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts: Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. Search for Give Different and subscribe. And here we go. Before you got into Web3, you were at what I think is, I've never met anyone at LEGO, but I think LEGO is one of the coolest companies out there. I mean, I wanted to show you this. For Christmas this year, I don't, like if my family or my mother or father-in-law ask what I want, honestly, I feel like I don't really need anything. And so I'll Lego, any kind of Lego.
Right.
Boom, I have an Aston Martin car.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Is that Speed Champions?
The exact model of this is the Vantage GT3, but I don't know
Because we have Lego has all these like sort of franchises, if you will, right? There's like the kids franchises, and then there's this line called Speed Champions where they have partnerships with all these kind of legit car companies and sports cars, and that might be one of them. Not sure.
That's cool. Yeah, in this one was, so I've had some of those like adult oriented Legos, like where you have like the architecture ones. Those are really cool. I've actually gifted my dad those ones. He really enjoys building Lego. There's something about like Lego that just never gets old, even if you get older. So it's whoever was the one at Lego who thought like, hey, let's build some Lego sets that are geared to an older demographic. That was like a genius move, because it got me back into Lego and thinking Lego, hey, it's for everyone. But anyways, that
was a really good move, actually. Like there was a lot of debate internally, because like the reality is we knew like we had millions of adult fans, yet there was this sort of internal ethos like, no, we're like about the kids and we want to like build the future of these children and the builders of tomorrow, as we would call it. And they're like, look, like we're leaving millions of dollars on the table, so like let's start like a kind of adult targeted like line. And so it just like started spinning those wheels, and now it's a machine.
That's so interesting. So I guess I never really thought of the process of how that came to be, but it's interesting to hear that there was like some resistance at first to the idea. But then I'm sure once like what was the first like adult oriented set that came out? Do you know? Was it one of those architecture sets like Paris or like London?
Yeah, I think architecture was definitely architecture. I think came about through like a very agile process, where it was never meant like, okay, let's do this and build some set targeted towards adults. Like I think it was just some guys in a room who were smashing ideas together, and I think they ran a pilot and sold X number of them and realized like, hey, we're onto something. And I've actually got, for some of those who know Singapore, they might recognize it, but it's like Marina Bay Sands is this sort of famous structure in Singapore where it's like these 3 big towers and this kind of literal pool on top that
scales. I've seen this. Yeah.
So I've got like an architecture sort of exclusive set on that, and that like literally goes for 500 on the secondary market, like at a minimum.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay. Well, before we like talk about what you did at Lego, what is the most so you said you would get like staff only type releases, I guess,
right,
every Christmas.
Yeah.
So like what was your favorite? Do you have any like that's kind of rise to the top?
Yeah, like the one that I think I would refuse to sell is a relatively tall, like maybe it can a little bit over your knees. It's a nutcracker. And it's really special. Like normally Lego boxes are like these sort of rectangular
Hmm.
sort of a things, but because it's a nutcracker, it's this vertical thing, and then the top of the packaging is this triangle, and it's really special. So I think that one is yeah, is quite nice amongst the others. Like there's a number of other different sets. I think there was like a Christmassy looking X-wing.
Okay.
So
Hey, that'd be cool.
um,
I like some Star Wars fans would pay a lot for that, I'm sure.
yeah, actually, so we sold that for a decent amount the other week.
Some people flip NFTs, others flip Lego.
Exactly. You know, it's there's a market for everything. It's really funny.
That's crazy. So what kind of like what size are these releases? Like how many are they creating? Like the Nutcracker,
um,
for example.
yeah, so those are literally for every single employee in the
Okay.
company. So I don't recall how many we had working there, but I'm sure it's like between 10, 15, 20,000 people.
Right. But still, when you consider like what's Lego's audience?
Yeah,
Like
so I mean,
like
like Lego's
actual
audience,
yeah.
like in terms of who would sort of buy that.
Right. Well, it would just by
Um,
Lego period. Yeah. It's probably tens of if not hundreds of millions, right?
oh yeah, for sure. Like it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they have been uh consistently growing. So they went through like one major tough time, around like I think 2005 ish. I could be wrong, but like nearly bankruptcy. And so there's a a number of books written on that.
Yep.
And they really transformed, recovered from that, and then in around 2000 and I think 17, it was sort of a rough time, but ever since then it's been like ridiculous. And then COVID just like
Yeah.
accelerated. I mean, to the detriment of many parents. Like I had buddies that were writing me. They're like, dude, I have so many Lego City sets, and it's all your fault. Like, I do not need more, um, because there was nothing else to do.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Everyone's stuck inside. Like they had to do something. Yeah.
exactly. So, and then surprisingly, post COVID, the growth has been consistent,
Hmm.
like over double digit, beyond expectations. And so, it's like you could argue like you don't even need marketing because it's just like selling
No.
itself at this
I
point.
one of the most I have so many questions to ask you. One of the most genius moves that Lego did, in my opinion, is just incorporating other IP into their
Right.
sets. And
Yeah.
so, like, I'm a big Harry Potter fan. My kids are huge Minecraft fans. Like, whenever we go to Target or Walmart or any store, it's like they want to just go see the Lego section. And the Lego section is the biggest section in every store you go to. Like there's going to be multiple aisles for Lego.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's just genius. Like so you have different IPs constantly being added.
Yeah, it's a massive part of the business. Like we have licensed IPs, and then we have what we call homegrown IPs,
Hmm.
that we sort of created from scratch ourselves. And the licensed IPs is sort of like a bit of a double-edged sword, because like it's extremely like lucrative, and it obviously it sells on its own. Like we literally don't have to put marketing on it, because like Disney would put a pretty big movie behind Star Wars, sort of like maybe every other year. Um, and obviously the sets would connect to that movie, so it would do really well. But like if certain IPs were down and they weren't, having support from like Warner Brothers, then it would bring more volatility to the business, and so we would have to depend on like
Mm.
other stuff. And it was getting to the point where there was a lot of debate internally, where yeah, you talk to kids and you ask them like what is Lego, and then they're like, oh, Lego's a character. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, Lego's like Spider-Man, Lego's like Batman, and but they wouldn't buy it unless it was tied to like Marvel.
Oh, interesting.
Um, so we're like, oh, like is this not a good thing? Because then we're like almost too reliant on the IP. And like, what about like what we really are? And so like the Lego City or the Lego Classic, which was like the
Yeah.
core Lego building experience and using your own imagination and creativity, was like suffering. So that's like a constant battle actually of like um how do we sort of transform and bring freshness
Hmm.
to, some of that core stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think at least I can speak for my kids. So I have four boys. They all love Lego, and we have so many Lego sets. But the only Lego sets that are still intact are the ones that I have behind me on the shelf. Because
Right.
inevitably they spend hours building, and maybe it'll last a week or two, but then like their imagination takes over and they're building something totally different and they're expanding on it. Which,
Yeah.
when I grew up with like a big kind of rectangle box full of just a variety of Lego. And I still remember like, building spaceships with my dad. Like there was no spaceship Lego at that point, but we would just take different Lego and we would build spaceships. But yeah, so I think just in general, kids like that, their imagination is going to take over, and I think Lego is just like this perfect, to mix metaphors, like a sandbox to really just you know build and kind of do whatever you want in, and it just is it's so catered to that. Yeah, but it's interesting to hear of kind of the debate of like relying too much on IPs and yeah, I mean, so when you talk about licensed IP, we're talking about like Star Wars, but then you have your in-house brands that
Right.
you're launching. I googled or I YouTubed your name and came across this launch of Nexo Nights. Is it Nexo?
Okay. I
Am
was
I
a little
saying?
bit scared for a second. It's like when you get Googled, you're like, oh gosh, like what is going to come up?
No, it's called Nexo Nights, right? It was
Yep.
you
Yep.
and there was one other guy. You guys are like you're somewhere. There's a bunch of kids. I'm sure there's a bunch of
Right.
adults in the background. And you're talking about the launch of Nexo Nights. That's an in-house Lego
Yes.
IP. Yeah, just like Lego
Yes.
City and like Lego Classic and all this.
Correct. Or like a Ninjago. Yeah.
And yeah. My
Yeah.
kids love Ninjago. What what was your role at Lego? And I'm assuming it had something to do with that if you're there announcing this new kind of product. But yeah, what did you do? And I guess what were you most proud of for when you look back at the 7 plus 8 years that you were at Lego? What are you just really stoked about?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice question. Like not enough people ask like, of those happy moments. Like Lego was a huge breath of fresh air because prior to Lego I was at Procter& and Gamble for like 8 years.
Hmm.
And my first job, I was literally like an assistant brand manager on sanitary napkins. Um, like
Hey,
my
super important during COVID, right?
very important. Like my first day in the office at that time, this is in Japan. I walk in and this guy's got all these like napkins, sanitary napkins, like laid out on his table, and he's like smelling them. It's like some Indian dude. And I walked in, I was like, what is going on? He was looking at me, he was laughing, I was laughing. Um, and they gave me like the responsibility of like building the brand and marketing like panty liners. They're like, your job is to be the single biggest expert in panty liners in Japan. Like you have to know more than
What a job.
anybody else.
Wow.
um, and so yeah, after doing like pads and panty liners and then like shampoo, Lego was a huge breath of fresh air, as you
I
can
believe it.
imagine. um, because it just opened up a whole sort of world of like looking at brands differently and something that has a different sort of impact, right? Obviously, necessities and those sort of goods are very important. Like, we need pads, we need shampoo, but there's a higher level order
Hmm.
of importance that perhaps, something like Lego can deliver. Um, and I think there were, yeah, I think two things that I was really kind of happy and proud of, because my career at Lego was sort of split into two. So one was like regional, like Southeast Asia APAC marketing, and then the second was like incubation for new sort of business models. And so that Next Nights experience was actually really exciting
Hmm.
because it was this concept whereby we wanted to recreate the next Ninjago, because Ninjago was a running success. Like the company was going to kill it, and kids wrote back in and they said don't. So they
Wow.
brought it back.
Yeah,
To
Ninjago.
this,
Well, let me just quickly say, so we live, just outside Orlando, and Legoland is like 45 minutes down the road, and so we've gone
oh,
to
awesome.
Legoland. Yeah, and the highlight of all of Legoland is the Ninjago ride, and so my kids just love that. And like when you go into the Ninjago kind of world, you got like it's all themed, and you're walking, and it feels like you're in the same area of like the TV show, and it's really cool.
Yeah, like Ninjago is a great success. Like, and how do you say, the model was the same. You build an IP via creating a story around these characters, so it gives them this personality
Hmm.
and this emotional connection to um, kids. Um, and then around that story, they want to get the toy, and they want to get the good guy, the bad guy, and this and that. But every 6 months, you flip the story, new season, right? So it's a new environment, new weapons. So it creates a little bit of that FOMO of like the kid wants that latest thing because he's watching it on TV and he's talking about it with
Yeah.
his friends at the playground. So the company wanted to like repeat success,
Hmm.
so to speak, and they thought, hey, knights always have this kind of like DNA with Lego.
Hmm.
Um, Yet, and at the time, I think this was 2017, 18, where like everything was going like digital. Um, Kids were changing their behaviors.
Hmm.
Um, and so they're like, let's make them like these digitized like knights on like steroids. Um, and it had this whole sort of storyline where they're interacting with like this virtual wizard who's giving them special powers, and they kind of grow together as friends, blah blah blah. But I think what was exciting was like, for me, I didn't want to just launch whatever Global was doing, and I wanted
Hmm.
to like just take things with a different spin and create genuinely fun experiences. And
Hmm.
so one of the things that we did was we knew that the retail environment is a great place where you don't only buy Lego, but you should experience Lego. Like,
Hmm.
if you walk into an Apple store,
Yeah.
you feel like you are enjoying your time and you're getting to demo different things, much less being sold Apple. Like the merch is just sort of on the sides. It's quite kind of um, uh, sort of hidden in that sort of sense. And so this concept of retailtainment, so we created this like arcade game where you could be like the Nexo Knight, and we had this like sort of plastic sword and shields where these kids we could like fight the enemies, and it had all the technology where it was looking at their motions and this and that, and these kids were beating this arcade game to death, like they were literally smacking the screens. So and we had some senior executives who were sitting in the Singapore office, and they're like, guys, what is going on? Like, I just went to the store and it's like broken, like it's completely torn to shreds. So we're like, that can't be a terrible thing. He's like, fix it now. um, but it was so fun because it was something that we pioneered and we created, and the rest of Europe and the US were like, whoa, that is pretty crazy.
That's really cool.
So yeah, that was one experience that was really fun. I think the main one that I really remember was when I was in the business model sort of incubation team. So within Lego, there is a sort of unit called Creative Play Lab. Um, and its job is it's almost like an R&D innovation center that's supposed to pump out either a completely new, radically different experience, um, which tends to be a little bit like Phygital, or look towards new business model opportunities. So, for example, like we make money via selling bricks, but what if we made money differently? Like, what if we, for example, this is one of the ideas, and it probably wouldn't surface, but kids have, I'm sure you have all this Lego that's sitting around, and what if we just sold like building instructions digitally?
Yeah.
And you just paid for those, and kids could use whatever they had at home to kind of like build things.
Yeah, no, and I mean, that's literally something that my kids do. They're like, "Hey, can you go get the PDF instructions of this playset?" And they're just going to build it to the best that that they can. And so, they do that.
Yeah. And so we we were trying to sort of create experiences that would extend the life of the toy.
Hmm.
And at that time, um, subscription was very popular, right? You know, Spotify or this or that, and it creates this loyalty.
Yeah.
Um, and so, and I can probably talk about it because like the idea got canned. But I put like my sweat, everything. I was a product owner of like creating something and going from 0 to 1. Like, so it's not like there's already existing ideas and let's go launch it. Like, they're
Yeah.
literally looking at teams, agile teams, and like come up with something, figure out what's a problem to solve, um, create an MVP, demo it, get investment, and scale. Um, and so the initial phase was we were like, okay, um, the problem is there's so many sets out there. You don't know where to start. You don't know where to go next. So we called it like Lego Journey.
Hmm.
And it was this sort of like subscription where it's like you would get this set, and then it would feed you the next set and then the next set. And then,
That Yeah. No, that's cool. It's like a roadmap. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's like a Web3 become Web2 roadmap. So,
Yeah.
and ideally kids would grow with that experience, while how do you say, um, building up their capabilities. Um, at the same time, parents, they actually don't know what to buy, right? They
Hmm.
they don't know what's left from right. There's like literally 500 different products. And then it brings in more revenue for Lego, right? Which is great. And there were parts of the company that loved it. I was going around the whole company like pitching it to e-commerce and this and that, and like a lot of the VPs loved it. Our own incubation unit, they were a little bit skeptical, and they were sort of like, where's the fundamental play in this idea? um how are you innovating the play itself versus like retrofitting,
Hmm.
how do we, Spotify, Lego. So it's like, okay, fine. So then along we sort of pivoted a little bit, where one of our designers came up with this idea like, okay, not only do you get a subscription, not only do you get Lego Journey, but you get something that boosts your play. It's
Hmm.
like this app, this digital experience that will feed you like ideas
Hmm.
to play differently. And that evolved because I realized, at the time my kid was 2. Um and when I'm playing with my kid, like let's say I have a car and I'm driving it up and down, and maybe he's entertained for like 15 seconds, and then I'm done. Like I have no more ideas. Like I don't know what to do. And then my wife, who comes over, who's actually like a preschool teacher and who interacts with kids all the time, like she comes up with this stuff, and we're like, wait a minute, there's maybe this insight where like parents, uh they wish that they could help their kids with like different ideas, but they lack it.
Hmm.
um some kids are very creative, but there are many kids who maybe they need a little bit of like a jump start.
Hmm.
So then we chucked the entire kind of like subscription model, and we just said, okay, it's a digital service called the Play Coach.
Hmm.
um, and you pay X amount for that episode, and you can couple it with like whatever set you want that will coach or boost the play of that kind
Hmm.
of
Yeah,
item.
yeah. That's cool. It kind of enhances the product just even more. Did that was that greenlit?
So that it sort of went into the backlog because there were other ideas that were sort of, um, at a high level strategic objective, trying to achieve the same thing, but we're maybe further along from an MVP perspective. So, obviously, I was like totally gutted because I literally spent like a year with this team, like building this product and this strategy, and sold it around. And
Yeah.
but what we did end up launching, which is in the market as of last June. So you should check it out if you haven't already. Be keen to see what you think about it. It's called Lego City Missions, and the proposition, is, build build with missions, not instructions.
Hmm. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, I'm on the landing page.
Yeah, so like, there's no instruction sheets, and for example, let's say you have the base bricks of a spaceship, but rather than saying put this here or there, it'll say, oh no, like, a meteor is coming.
Hmm.
We need to like do something. Help us. Like the app says that, and then the
Right.
kid will kind of like build something to kind of fix that problem. And then once you sort of get beyond that, then there's a new problem.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, we it was really cool because I was working together with our story lead who had a lot of experience in the film industry. And there's every story, every movie has a story arc.
Hmm.
There's a problem that needs to be solved, and then everybody gets saved, and then there's this hurrah moment. And so, quite proud of that as well. Like it's actually on the shelves, and I do believe that that's a stepping stone to like more things to come.
It's really cool. Yeah. So Lego Missions sounds very similar to your Lego Journeys idea.
Yeah, correct.
It's essentially, I get, like, if I'm gonna summarize it, it's like it's kind of like a loyalty system, but it's also like this. There's like this incentivizing to continue on that journey, which then just kind of enhances the experience of the kid, but then also like puts money in the bank accounts of Lego because they just
Yeah,
are going to
correct.
keep adding. And there's like this is going to be my segue. So my segue to Web3 as we're for 40 minutes in talking about Lego, and I could keep asking you questions, but I mean there's so many parallels when I think about like NFT projects and how they're rolling out loyalty, or even like Starbucks, like doing it in a mass scale way, albeit beta, and I've signed up and I'm waiting still to get my invite. Starbucks, if you're here. But like it's this idea of loyalty and incentivization, and the blockchain is just so geared towards that. So I'd be curious to get your thoughts on, I mean, just parallels that you see, but parallels you see from your time at Lego and in incubation, and what was it called, the Creative Playgrounds? Was that
Creative Play Lab.
Creative Play Lab? Yeah, which is a cool name. But so it was about a year ago you left Lego and you just went all into Web3. How did
Yeah.
that? How did you even like? What was your thought process? Like, what made you take the plunge?
Yeah, it, it all started with a mint. And then it all started with a mint in Discord, and then I went down the rabbit hole. I took the, what is it, the red pill.
Yeah. What was the project?
So
Most of our
I
first projects, by the way, are horrible and not worth mentioning.
yeah, like I had been dabbling at a very superficial level with crypto, buying some stuff since 2018. I came at the top of the market in 2018. So obviously, that went down by 80%, and I sort of forgot about it.
Right.
And then it came back. I think it was like Q4 of 2020, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
20. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
yeah, my years all messed up, but I was kind of coming back, and then I was religiously like watching this guy named Journey, Jaren Y. He's like, I'd say top five
Yep.
crypto NFT influencer, in the industry. And and it's like I say I was religiously watching those videos, but I didn't watch the ones that were NFT related, which was so stupid because he was talking about bored apes and
Oh man.
like
Yeah.
so that selective listening was a very, very poor decision. And he mentioned he was going to launch an NFT. And then I heard of this project called Clone X. And I was like, hey, that sounds really cool. And they were saying that they were going to do this like advertising in like in New York, and it was going to like be big. And I had this other friend who was a little bit more into NFTs than I was at the time, and he was like super bullish. He's like, dude, like this is gonna like really be long term, go super well. Which at that point I knew nothing, and so I literally like woke up in the middle of the night to mint it. First time entering Discord, seeing like Elmo gifs on fire, and
I know exactly what you're talking about.
and and the mint like it messed up. Like they had like a some issue with the contract, I think a couple of hours after the initial mint. So it's like everything was going crazy, and they said, well, we'll come back in a couple of days. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for it, because initially it was a they were gonna kind of like target it at 3 ETH, And then they said that I even forget the name because it's been a while, but like where they slowly dropped the price.
Oh, a Dutch
Dutch
auction.
auction. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Dutch auction. They were going to say, okay, Thursday Dutch auction, which was going to be 3 a.m. my time. So I was like, okay, perfect. So then I wake up at 2:50 in the morning, like a noob, being totally unprepared, and then they announce Dutch auction cancel 2 ETH. That's it. So everybody's going nuts. I I did have MetaMask, but I was not very familiar with it. I still had my money sitting on an exchange.
Oh
I was
man.
trying to connect to the site. It wasn't connecting. Like I was like,
Oh man.
it's like, what am I doing? Total failure.
So CloneX was your
And
first. Did you successfully mint?
no, I didn't. I didn't.
Oh.
No, and I wish I did because I mean, yeah, it was expensive at the time. But my buddy who minted, he minted one, and the artifact team felt bad about like switching from Dutch auction to just to
Mm.
ETH, and community was upset, and so they said they would airdrop to the people, some of the people who had minted initially, and so my buddy got two.
Oh really?
Yeah, for
That's a
the price of 3 ETH, which was quite kind of nice.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Uh,
And I mean, what's it wasn't long after. So I was kind of like watching the CloneX mint happen. But it really wasn't that long after when like the gigantic announcement came out that Nike was buying it like
yeah,
completely. It wasn't just like a partnership; they were like buying the project, and it was
yeah,
kind of
that
like
came like
their.
10 days later after the mint, I think.
So yeah, and there was all this. I remember all the speculation of like if like people already knew, like at the time, but yeah, and then like Nike's gone on to make. Last I read, there were like 100. I think last year they made $182 million through Web3 efforts. So that's like CloneX. That's through their, they have a whole Nike land in Roblox. And they've like a ton of digital kind of emphasis, metaverse type activations, and then they just launched something called like Swoosh, I think, the
Nike
other
dot
day.
swoosh dot
Nike
swoosh.
does. I don't even know much about that, but okay, wow. So CloneX was your first like experience of like joining Discord, and that's a pretty wild one to be a first.
Yeah, pretty wild. And so, after that experience, I definitely learned my lessons of trying to understand something and figure out Discord, and I grinded real hard. My entire Christmas was snapped up by grinding, speaking to teenagers about what they had for breakfast, and I'd be around the city with my wife, and she was like, what are you doing? Like it got quite contentious, and I was like, trust me, like this is gonna be big. And I even needed to enter a competition for it. So
And this is when
they
you're
still.
grinding for a whitelist spot, like in Discord. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so I grinded like crazy. So I owned the Canadian channel. Like I lived in the Canadian channel. I knew all the other Canadians that were there. Welcoming everybody. Hey, how are you? How's your day? And whatever. um, and I was probably at least like level 20. Um, spending at least like I think 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
Um,
You went from incubation at Lego to grinding Discord whitelists.
yeah, to dancing and singing for them. Like that, it's insane. Like they held this. They said we're gonna hold a dancing slash singing competition. I was like, because I used to be a breakdancer,
Oh, that's cool.
like just for fun. And then my wife, she's a pretty good singer and plays the piano, very much more talented than I am. And they said we're gonna have this competition. It's gonna be in front of our entire Discord audience. We'll select 15 lucky people,
Wow.
and I was selected. I
Wow.
was like, oh my goodness. And then so I was like, honey, There's this thing that I need you to do, and it's going to be at 11 p.m. at night. And she's like, are you kidding me? Um, and yeah, so we got the whitelist finally. So this was for Invisible Friends, which was,
Mm.
I think, one of probably the top 2 or 3 most hyped projects in Q1 of last year.
Oh yeah.
That, the mint was 0.25, but on secondary off the bat, I think the first person bought it at 15 ETH,
Yeah.
and then it was averaging between like 9 to 11. Um,
Yeah, it was crazy.
yeah, it was pretty insane.
And
Um,
have you held on to that Invisible Friends that you minted, or did you flip it right away?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask that question. So
Is this your Nutcracker Lego set, or is this that Christmas X-wing?
yeah, so this is the Nutcracker, unfortunately. So I'm proudly sporting that picture, which would used to be worth like 40,000 US dollars.
Things
Which
can always change. You also have the story. There's something about like the minting experience, and it's you have it's verifiable via the blockchain. Nothing's going to change that. It's and you have the story behind it, so
yeah,
you can tell your grandkids one day.
yeah, exactly. I can tell them that Daddy can only afford McDonald's today, because
That's
he
funny.
wanted to keep a picture.
Yeah, that's great. Um,
Um,
so what are you
yeah,
doing in Web3 now?
yeah. So like, how do you say that initial experience went from grinding to realizing there is a legitimate opportunity here.
Hmm.
And the first person to bring me in, I would join all these AMAs on a community, with the hopes of winning a whitelist, and it was a project called Carrefour, which not the level of hype as Invisible Friends, but a decent level of hype. It was some major influencers were saying this was going to be their Azuki redemption because they missed that one. It had a collaboration with Hypebeast and Atmos, which are two very large lifestyle brands, and so I joined the AMA. And long story short, I asked them a question which I felt was going to get me a whitelist. Um, because like the people who join these AMAs, I guess they're degens and they're like teenagers. Like what do
Yeah.
their level of experience with regards to like professionalism and marketing is maybe not to the same level as like an oldie like me. So I asked the question, and they didn't really know how to answer it. They kind of gave it some lip service, and the founder was like, "Bro, I want to hire you." And I was like, "What?" And again, on the Discord, there were Elmo's on fire. Everybody's like, "What's going on?" AMA turns job interview.
Wow.
And I thought he was joking, but we connected a few days later. We started to have weekly meetings, and and I think he was attracted because I had this IP experience from Lego,
Hmm.
and Carrefour in some senses was trying to be an IP, and I had some perspective on that. So he said like we could really use your help. So I was giving a little bit of like marketing advisory on like where it could potentially go, trying to help them connect with like Hollywood producers in the US, or folks from Netflix that I got some contacts from an ex-colleague, to sort of pave a larger potential of like what IP could truly mean.
Wow. That is the most Web3 type thing to happen.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
yeah. And obviously it
Uh,
was the bull market, so it was very, very euphoric. Like, yeah, can't even,
right.
yeah,
Yeah. Everyone is just, yeah. It's very different now. Like the people that are in it now still are the people that are, like they're actually in it for the technology. Like we've all lost money probably,
Yeah.
on our NFTs that we are still holding. But I think what gets us excited, what gets me excited, is like the technology and kind of the promise it has and the potential it has. Do you so was that your first like Web3 position out of Lego?
Yeah, that I mean, I was actually doing that part-time while I was at Lego, so I was like
Okay.
moonlighting there. Um and, and I was just shouting at Lego like, guys, like Web3, get it together.
Hmm.
Like we've got to figure something out. But, giant companies, they don't understand. They're like, "Oh, isn't that bad for the environment?" Um And yeah, perhaps there is some degree of truth to it, but technology evolves, it gets more efficient, it gets better. So, um, but yeah, like I then got an offer to join Kraken to help launch the NFT marketplace. So it was at that point where it was sort of like a corporate Web3 gig and moonlighting Web3 project advisory, and I was like, okay, um,
Hmm.
I don't want to miss this boat.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know how it's going to go. I haven't exactly, known that space for a very long time. But if it's any time, it better be now. Versus like I regret 5 years from now, like
Hmm.
I should have taken that jump.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, I mean, Kraken had that corporate. I mean, they're still around. They're like one of the exchanges. Um, yeah, and like they regularly release market reports and really helpful analysis on kind of the state of the market, which I benefit from quite often. But so you were a part of their NFT marketplace launch.
Correct. Yeah. So that was like a 0 to 1 sort of a situation where, obviously everybody's uncle and auntie was launching a NFT marketplace. So they wanted to as well. And given the, how do you say, respect and security uh, heavy approach that Kraken takes, they felt that they could offer a more kind of safe
Mm,
proposition to the market, um, that over the long term, hopefully, will be a proposition that traders and consumers will find valuable.
yeah, yeah, no, that's cool. And um, where are you now with Web3?
Yeah, so it's like things change a lot. I started to work at a Web3 launchpad named Project Gojira since a number of months ago, um, which um, yeah, they're great kind of leadership, and they bring in a lot of like professional Web2 people to help. Like they've got like M&A people, bankers, um, kind of like blue chip marketers like myself, trying to build out, you know, how can there be a launch pad slash services to make the space better. Um, and yeah, like the founder has a really good heart. Like um, there are some issues, in the Web3 space where people get scammed. Or there
Yeah.
was one challenge very recently where the guy was like, "Oh, my aunt is in the hospital. I don't have enough money. I
Hmm.
have to sell my Gen 2. I really don't want to sell my Gen 1." Yeah, like Gen 2 at its peak was like 8 ETH. Gen 1 at its peak was 25 ETH. Now it's like, I guess, 1 ETH and 7 ETH respectively. And the founder was like, okay, we got to help this guy. So then, contributing to that guy as well as going through the community to say,
Hmm.
hey, we got to help our family
Hmm.
here. So there's a lot of like, good that can
Yeah.
also come out of these communities.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and on that note, let's talk about the good of Web3 and some of the value that you see there. You just mentioned the community aspect. I mean, I'd be curious to get you to talk more about that, or what gets you most excited about Web3 and its potential?
Yeah, like um I see tons of potential from a commercial perspective, and I also see tons of potential from a, I guess, non-commercial, you know, making things better sort of a perspective. And I think to put a little bit of a context around where we are now, and this is what I was sharing with somebody last week who was looking to figure out NFTs for the company,
Hmm.
was like, we are in the same phase as that first .com boom and busts, where anything that named itself .com or listed shares under the guise of .com like just went to the moon, um, which is the same now. Anything that was like NFT went to the moon. But after the crash, it was the Yahoos of the world and the Googles of the world who were building, realizing
Hmm.
that .com would be a platform upon which you would build a legitimate business and service. So I believe that we're sort of at that same juncture where the real builders are building using technology of crypto as well as, or rather, blockchain and NFTs, where, a few years down the road, perhaps even faster, like I don't think we're going to talk about NFTs anymore. We don't say, I'm going to use the internet today. Like we just say, I'm going to buy a shirt or I'm going to like order food, and we use
Yeah.
the internet. Um, so I think it's exactly going to be the same way. Um, and so, from a commercial perspective and being the brand guy and marketing guy that I am, I see there's always been a trend of going from mass brands to direct to consumer, more customized brand experiences. So you had the Nikes of the world and the Adidases of the world, but you also had your smaller shops that they would direct to ship, more customized to your needs. And I think that, for example, if the Legos of the world or the Nikes of the world, adopt NFTs, it can create um, direct to consumer e-commerce sort of on steroids.
Hmm.
Um, and I read the other day like a McKinsey report on the metaverse and this whole ecosystem, estimating that I think the e-commerce business is going to be like, I don't know, something ridiculous. Like,
Like 5 trillion, I think, by
yeah,
2030.
exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
Huge.
So I think the writing is on the wall, because like brands and businesses desire to provide these experiences, and they are, but there isn't, technology yet that they understand to um, deliver that experience. So I think like token gated um, communities and experiences to not only bring better products and services to the end consumer will happen, but I also think, how do you leverage your community to almost co-create back
Hmm.
together, right? So as we know, the power of community, you can create this rational and intensively irrational loyalty to
Yeah.
in this community, where they love to build, they love to share ideas, and so I see the growth of a creator economy that is better facilitated through the technology, that will also make things more open versus closed, which then can spur on, more experimentation, creativity, and therefore delivering more value.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. Um, how do you see, and let's think of like nonprofits and the NGOs of the world for right now. So I don't know what are some of the biggest nonprofits you have in Singapore, out of curiosity. Have you heard of like Charity Water, or Charity Water? They drill wells in developing world, countries that need clean water, just access to clean water. That's their mission.
Not as familiar, but definitely aware there's a number of those sort of programs around. Yes.
Yeah. So, like when we think of mission kind of driven organizations, companies that are not in it for a profit, how can they use Web3 to kind of harness that community in a new way, in a new global way? And I mean, like, how do they even start? Like, what does that
Mm,
look like?
mm. Yeah. I think the interesting thing, and I always start with like first principles and truths and insights, right? So, for example, when I was giving that example of Lego, um, you can think about all these sort of glamorous sort of business models, but like the basic truth is that like there needs to be fun in the play,
Hmm.
or a parent needs ideas. So it starts from this core need or core truth. And I think that there's a core truth with regards to how people want to be in like tribes
Hmm.
and groups of like-minded people.
Hmm.
You can see that where people sort of physically gather from like a gathering perspective, in real life. Facebook also had a strategy a number of years ago where it was like they're trying to create like Facebook groups, and then as they gather those people, then there's surfacing of common interests and passions and so on and so forth. And so the beauty of Web3 is that it really brings together people who have a particular passion and desire to add value, like um, where they have certain skill sets that they think that they can offer, that in some ways could be more exciting for them than maybe what they do during the day. Um, and not to digress completely, but I do think we are heading in a direction of like not the one job career, but like a portfolio career
Hmm.
where people will be doing multiple things sort of at the same time, because things will be outsourced and AI and this and that, as well as Web3 enabling that. So
Yeah.
I think like an NGO or any sort of entity which truly has a powerful like cause, like the why. If you like, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek,
Yeah.
and he talks about like what's your why. And when you have a strong why, and when you have a strong founder who really is compelled to push that cause, there are going to be people who want to propel that mission as well, and will gather and incubate ideas, or how can we help solve that problem, and they'll come from all different backgrounds of different expertise all around the world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And it is a really interesting way, I think, the blockchain gives us to galvanize audiences in a global way. Like what you said about the future, like we might not just be working for one organization. People might be working for several, and they kind of have the essence of what a DAO is, a decentralized autonomous organization. And you can imagine DAOs being built around causes, and people contributing to that cause and being rewarded for their contribution. But then, people might have four causes that they're contributing that their skill set to, and altogether, all four of those kind of make up their livelihood and their living. Like that's probably going to be reality. I don't see why that wouldn't be, because it's more efficient for the organization. In a lot of cases, I mean, you're going to have people that are there kind of full time, kind of casting the vision for what those DAOs are. But yeah, it's interesting, kind of what the blockchain gives us the ability to do.
Yeah, I was even talking to kind of like a startup pre-Christmas, and their vision is to kind of be like the metaverse of Job Street or in the metaverse of LinkedIn in some ways. Not that grand, but they're realizing there's this massive talent pool in like less developed countries, like say Southeast Asia, Philippines and Indonesia, and there's a way to train them up, or there's already existing talent, and how they can find work and help contribute from a Web3 perspective or whatever it is back to other countries. And they just want to use the metaverse as a place where people sort of gather and have that community, and you equip them with tools. And so I think this will happen both organically as well as in a structured manner to kind of enable people to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything I missed? Anything I should have asked you? This has been like so much fun. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, like I literally talked to a guy yesterday for 5 hours. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it was supposed to be
Was it for a
1 hour. It wasn't for a podcast, but like,
you should have made it a podcast.
we should have. Like, he's a founder of a project, and he was like, actually, I need somebody like you. And so I was like, hold on.
You're getting job offers left and right, Kevin. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, but I think it's really interesting, the opportunities of Web3. Literally this morning when I woke up, I got a LinkedIn message from a company called Business Models Inc. that we used while I was at Lego to kind of start off also on that journey. Like, what's the process of how do you innovate the business model sort of process? And he just wrote me and he said, like, we're also looking into Web3 as a way to bring innovation. So I really think like the writing is on the wall.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it constantly. And so, whether it's bull or bear,
yeah,
I'm actually busier than I ever was. Like even more than the bull market, which is interesting.
Well, and they kind of say bear markets are for building,
right?
But it's super interesting. Like, people are like quietly building a lot of really innovative new platforms and technologies, things that are just going to make, when the next bull run hits and all hysteria comes back, will make everything easier, and people won't even know why, but it's going to be because of the people that are actually building all these tools right now. Just even onboarding into, 2 years ago, like spinning up a MetaMask wallet was not nearly, or using OpenSea, these things were not nearly as good as they are today. And they're only going to get better, and new platforms are going to come out. Yeah. Well, thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate your time as well. It was a ton of fun to just chat about this stuff, and we should do it again.
We should. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to go to sleep, and I'll let you get on with your day.
Yeah, I know it's getting late on your side, so thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. All right. Take care, Kevin.
Okay, take it easy. Bye.
Okay. Bye.